Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today I'm in this 2011 BMW Z4 and I'm going to try and figure out whether or not you should buy one. This is known as an E89 model and it ran from 2009 until 2016. And interestingly, it's the first BMW Z series car to feature a folding metal roof rather than one made from fabric. In most cases, a folding metal roof can look a bit awkward and ungainly, but I think in the case of this Z4, it works pretty well. It's quite a pretty car, this. I'm immediately regretting forgetting my sunglasses. I think it's a good looking car, the E89 Z4. It's everything you'd want from a roadster. It looks like it's going places even when it's stationary. It just looks like it means business. This is an M Sport model, which means it gets these huge, beautiful alloy wheels, which it really suits. It does ruin the ride, but I'll get onto that later. I love all the curves and the lines and the little details here and there. There's a lot going on, but it's also quite a clean, timeless design. I've always been a fan of the styling of this generation Z4. I mean, bear in mind this car's 12 years old now. I think it's aging really well, and there's no reason why it shouldn't continue to do so. Did you know this was the first BMW to be designed completely by female designers? I didn't know that. Whatever next? Next you'll be telling me there's female pilots and female policemen. That's a joke, by the way. Clearly a sexist joke. You've got the long, elegant bonnet, which is quite evocative, especially when you sat behind the wheel. You can see the ripples and the bulges in it. It's quite theatrical. I think it's a nod to the jet set era. It reminds me very much of the Z8 and the 507. The BMW 507, not, and I repeat, not the Peugeot. Let me make that quite clear. Moving inside the Z4, that timeless theme continues. It's a clever design, this, because there's absolutely nothing here to date it. I could imagine this car in 20 years' time and it'll still look right. This particular example has a red leather interior, which I know isn't to everyone's taste, but I really like it. It's like my SL55 AMG. It's very stylish and it just feels like more of an event. I love all the materials I've used. Everything feels really high quality. Everything feels durable. I also like how some of the buttons and switches are unique to the Z4. With mass manufacturing and parts sharing, that's something you rarely see these days. But it just makes you feel like you're in something rare and unique. The only thing which dates the interior a little is the radio display, which is very mid-2000s. I've never been a big fan of that pixelated orange font. It looked old-fashioned when it was new. I also don't like the position of the keys. I find myself constantly whacking my knees against it. But apart from that, it's quite a nice design. Oh, also, while I've got my negative head on, I would have rather they'd given me a traditional handbrake rather than this electronic one. On the bright side though, it is quite stylish. It almost looks like a bottle opener. I just would have preferred a traditional handbrake, especially on a sporty car like this. This next statement probably won't come as a shock with a car like this, but there's not an awful lot of room inside. It is quite cramped. I'm 5'11", or just about 6 foot if you include the quiff, and it is quite snug. There's enough storage just about, but you do have to be in the right mood to drive a car like this. I wouldn't want to have to use it every day. Right, we're just getting on the bypass, so I may as well do a quick performance test. So we're in third gear, foot to the floor. It's not blisteringly quick, but it does make a nice noise. 6,000 RPM into fourth. And all you'll be able to hear now is wind noise. But yeah, it's quick enough. I should point out at this stage that I'm in the SDrive23 model. SDrive23, which confusingly has a 2.5 litre straight six. Let me try and overtake this truck because all you can hear is the noise of that diesel engine. Auf Wiedersehen. This car with this engine reminds me a lot of the 2.7 Porsche Boxster I filmed with recently, in that you can drive it everywhere with your foot mashed in the carpet and you know you won't ever meet your maker. It hasn't got too much power that it ever feels unpredictable or dangerous, but it's got just enough that you can have some fun with it. I'll tell you something else about this car. The manual gearbox is a pleasure to use. You get nice, short, snappy throws. I thought that was an SVR. They do sound good, those, even though they are a complete chavmobile. But yeah, going back to interior storage, I think if I were to use this car on a daily basis, then it would aggravate me. Everything's on the small side. You get some door pockets on either side, but they're only big enough for 2 biro pens. You get some storage down here, which is big enough for your house keys. And you also get 2 cup holders, but they're only accessible under this armrest. So you have to choose if you want an armrest or cup holders. Pity. You also get a little compartment here for your crisps. This makes a lovely noise, you know. There's nothing better than driving a car like this on a day like this in the Derbyshire Dales. Speaking of storage, when the roof's up, then the boot isn't a bad size, but let's face it, you don't buy a car like this to keep the roof up all the time. And unfortunately, the minute you put your roof down, your boot space will evaporate. Under the very sexy bonnet of this particular example is a 2.5 litre naturally aspirated straight 6. It produces 201 horsepower, so it isn't the quickest thing you'll ever drive, but it makes a lovely noise, and it just feels meaty. Feels like it's got long legs, it takes long strides. This model is known as the SDrive23i. I don't know where they get the names from. I honestly expected to be a bit underwhelmed by this engine, but it's a real gem. It suits it really well. I love BMW 6-cylinders. They just don't feel as though you're putting them under any strain whatsoever. Now in late 2011, early 2012, they got rid of this engine and replaced it with a 4-cylinder turbo. Now that probably makes more sense, it's probably much more efficient, but as a general rule, with a car like this, you want a 6-cylinder. So you'll either need to go for an SDrive23 like this, or an SDrive30. There's nothing wrong with the 4-cylinders per se. I've got an E85 at the moment that's only a 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol. That one's only done 18,000 miles, it's a beautiful little car. But it just feels a bit wet in comparison to this. It's like non-alcohol beer. It's very nearly the same, but it's not the same. I'm squinting so much today because I forgot my sunglasses. At the end of this review, I'm going to have a forehead like Gordon Ramsay. The straight 6 BMW engine just feels much more substantial, so that's definitely what I'd go for. You can thank me later. Now, anyone considering buying a car like this will be most concerned by the way it drives. Is it fun? Is it fast? Does it handle well? Good questions. Here's what I know. Yes, it's fun. On a day like this, you really can't beat it. The steering's precise, even though it uses an electronic system rather than hydraulic. It's very well weighted. It's been calibrated nicely. You sit down in it nice and low, so you feel connected. Everything's within easy reach. It feels like a proper driver's car. The brakes are very good too. It corners nice and flat, the gear change is lovely. On a day like today, it is just a joy, it's a pleasure. If you're planning on buying one of these as your everyday car and your only car, then I'd advise you go for a 6-speed ZF Auto. Just a bit easier to live with on a daily basis. But if you plan on using it as your weekend toy, then definitely go for a manual. It's just much more fun. It sounds nice, it's balanced, it's poised, it will put a smile on your face. It isn't blisteringly fast, but it's fast enough. Thought that was my engine light, it's just my fuel, don't panic. If you want something faster than this 201 brake horsepower model, then you can go for a 335 brake horsepower twin turbo straight 6. I've not driven one, but I imagine that goes like a rocket. In reality, this is all the roadster that you'll ever need. You can drive it everywhere with your foot mashed into the carpet, and you know that you'll never have to have your trousers cut off by the air ambulance crew. And that's because even though it has quite a big engine up front and it sends all its power to the rear wheels, it's quite predictable. It's never a handful. It's nice and composed and civilised, which, thinking about it, might sound a bit boring, but deep down, I think that's what most people want. You don't want something which forces you to be on your toes all the time. You just want something to provide you with enough fun now and then, without being measured up for a neck brace. That's what I want, anyway. So yeah, as fun little roadsters go, I think the Z4 is a really good option. My main criticism with it, though, is the ride. Here's the thing, when you're driving it with the roof down on a nice day like today, you'll tolerate it, it's fine, it's just part of the experience. But when it's raining and the roof's up and you're using this to drive to the supermarket, you'll hate it. It's just too firm. In fact, firm doesn't even cut it. I dread making a lane change because I know driving over one of these cat's eyes will cause me more discomfort than a colonoscopy. The hard ride's fine when you're on an ideal country road in ideal weather, in the ideal mood. But when you've got to drive to Timpson's in Tewkesbury on a Tuesday, you'll just find it irritating. Watch this when I drive over these cat's eyes. How unpleasant. Of course, you could get a slightly softer ride by swapping these tyres for non-run flats, or not bothering with an M Sport model altogether. But you can't really do that because the non-M Sport models aren't fitted with alloys, they're fitted with casters, and it just looks wrong. So what do you choose? Looks, comfort, sweatpants, or suit pants? It's up to you. I know which I'd choose. If you want a better everyday convertible, then I'd recommend going for something like a Mercedes SLK or an Audi TT, because they're just a little bit easier to live with. But if you want a fun, good-looking sports car to use on high days and holidays, then I would definitely recommend a Z4 or a Porsche Boxster. They're the ones made for driving enthusiasts. If you're looking to buy one, then you'll need around £8,000 or £9,000, and that will buy you one with 80 or 90,000 miles on the clock. If you want a nicely spec'd model like this with 43,000 miles on the clock and heated leather seats, then you'll have to spend around 13 or 14. One word of warning though, make sure you buy one that's been looked after. Ideally you want to buy one from somebody who's pampered it like this one, always kept it in the garage with a heater on in the corner. I'd definitely suggest paying the extra money and buying something like that. It'll just save you money in the long run. The old saying's true, buy cheap, buy twice. Oh, look at the old Estoril Blue X5. I think that was a 4.6 IS. Loser, absolute loser. The other good thing with the Z4 is that the servicing costs aren't ridiculous. The most expensive thing on it are the tyres. Run flats are more expensive than standard ones. The running costs in general vary wildly depending on which model you go for. This, I suppose, is a middle-of-the-road model, so I may as well talk about this. This will do 24, 25 miles per gallon round town and 42, 43 on a steady motorway run. The road tax here in the UK is £330 a year, so it's not as cheap as a Toyota Aygo, granted, but it isn't in the highest bracket either. So the running costs really shouldn't break the bank. They will come in slightly cheaper than something like a Porsche Boxster. Mainly because BMW hourly rates are cheaper than Porsche, as are the parts. Something else to mention is that the Z4 had a facelift in 2013, so there were a few subtle tweaks. For example, it got slightly nicer headlamps with LED lights. But what they were doing there with the facelift really was just playing around with an already mouth-watering recipe. It's a very good car, the E89 Z4. The engines are all chain driven. I'd make sure there are no oil leaks, so perhaps get a pre-purchase inspection before you commit to buy. Make sure it's got good service history in both sets of keys. And that really is about it. Well, I think that's about it. If you're looking for a well-built roadster that you can use at the weekends, the E89 Z4 is a really good option. If you're planning to use it every day, however, then I think the ride would just annoy me. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. If you're interested in getting into the used car business, then check out my online course. I've created an online platform with nearly 100 videos which explain every single aspect of the used motor trade. From starting, funding, sourcing cars, preparing cars for sale, it's all there, so do check it out. It's still free for the first 30 days and then only £27 a month thereafter, and you can cancel at any time. So yeah, cheers guys, see you next time.